Hey review family, keep it tight. My name is Jay Morris, the review guy, reviewing music for the love of music, and I'm back again to bring you another video. And in this one I'm going to be covering the new Lorna Shore record entitled Immortal. So this is the third studio-length album by the deathcore band formed in 2010 known as Lorna Shore. One of the most well-regarded upstarts of the past decade, but I do feel like I have to go into a little bit of background for the band. So Tom Barber, the vocalist, the longtime vocalist, the permanent vocalist of Lorna Shore, joined Chelsea Grin not too long ago. MCreery, who was part of the Pennsylvania deathcore band Signs of the Swarm, took the vocal duties. But really close overall to when this record was supposed to come out, CJ had sexual allegations made towards him, detailed text messages that seemed to detail abuse in a relationship that allegedly lasted 4 years. They canceled a major section of their tour, announced that Immortal was going to be delayed until further notice, and before you know it, because of all the backlash that they were getting, CJ was removed from the band. And this also came with the shocking news that the vocals were not going to be redone, that the vocals were going to stay as is. Now I understand this is a little bit polarizing. A good friend of mine in the metal review community, the Metal Meltdown, is just flat out boycotting this record, which I can respect his decision to do that, even though I personally hold a different stance and disagree with just flat out boycotting it. Guilty by association is a valid response to the rest of the band, but you do not know the context, you do not know the behind the scenes. On the surface, we only get what is put in front of us, and we have no clue what is going on behind the scenes. And on paper, it doesn't look good. I do believe that CJ probably should have been removed from the band because, as opposed to just this being allegations, these were dated messages from him from the past fairly recently. But I would kind of like to segue into this record with one thing. Whether or not you're a die-hard believer in the CJ allegations and are a staunch advocate that he had to be removed from the band, or a die-hard denier that will basically bypass any logical evidence that is put in front of their face just because you have a hard-on for the band to some degree, you can't really deny, no matter where you lie on the spectrum, that if CJ's vocals were not kept for this record, it wouldn't have been as good. Flat out. It would not have been as good. I have nothing but respect for the dude. CJ is a better vocalist than he ever was, and much of that has to do with CJ's timbre overall. He has such an all-encompassing, grisly range that sounds like if you took Dickie Allen's highs from Infant Annihilator and merged them with Philip Boseman's lows from Whitechapel and Adam Warren's lows from Oceano, put them in a blender, and this is kind of what you got. Merging it into just one gruesome, gargly, heavy register. On paper, the confinements, for lack of a better word, of deathcore are still lingering here to some degree. It's not so much that Lorna Shore are just bypassing it completely or not abiding by it. They are merely adding an extra floor to the mansion that bands like All Shall Perish and Suicide Silence and Carnifex set. However, it was obvious to the build-up for this record that with every single ear-blasting, head-crushing, body-breaking, bone-snapping single that they were releasing, that Immortal was not only going to be the heaviest Lorna Shore record that they have dropped up until this point, but also the most laser-focused. Cut and dry, most of these are deathcore tracks, through and through. Thoroughbred, cookie cutter, whatever you want to call them, but it's the embellishments. It's the things they do to make these have so much more resonance, so much more push to them, so much more momentum and high-octane velocity to them. The tenacity that every single one of these tracks exudes are just amazing. Partially that can come down to CJ's amazing vocal work on this album, the layering of his grisly vocals, the gargly highs and the deep guttural lows. Another thing can be how they incorporate these orchestral and symphonic bits into their sound. Discovering this indistinguishably stark contrast between beauty and demented behavior, like on the first track Immortal or the track Hollow Sentence, where these little subtle embellishments of piano and these symphonic elements just make it sound so epic. Epic in an unsettling way at times. Or on the track King of Deception, my favorite personal track on the album, it was a single released in anticipation for the record, and this kind of shows another thing I love about this record. Call me typical, but these fucking breakdowns on this record, they mash my skull in. It feels like they ripped out a page and repurposed an Infinite Annihilator passage when it comes to the midway point to the end, especially with the grunterial grunt that leads into the breakdown, follows it closely with the massive spaces in between that just goes into gargled havoc, especially with that one pause where you just get the single hit, just a it's just so good. It really does sound great. Which this breakdown segues me once again into another thing I like about this record, the production. It is heavy. It is crushing. Everything is crunchy. The background guitar work that embellishes these tracks are amazing. Each frazzled melody, each devilish type of riff that hangs in the background and harmonizes with the lead blast beats and regular guitar work. All while CJ is just roaring out into oblivion in many of his different vocal techniques like a damn chameleon. It is a hard-hitting deathcore record. It sounds good. I don't want to be the one to say it is the most ingenious record I've ever heard. But in this day and age of deathcore being pulled from every which direction in ways that sometimes pan out and sometimes doesn't, sometimes you get great records like that Angel Maker record last year, and sometimes you get things like Suicide Silence last record, which can barely be called a deathcore record, although they are dropping a new one this year. I'm excited for that. I will say the only time that Lorna Shore drags on this record is when they just go into some typical deathcore patterns, sections where they'll drag out a blast beat for 20, 30, 40 seconds, usually just with layered shrieks and growls. It's usually around these sections where they will lead into a bridge or a chorus that occasionally will just come off as, okay, we get it, you understand how to do this style justice, but you need a little bit more. What else? And even though some of the choruses can feel surprisingly sticky for a genre like this, I would say that they occasionally get a little mundane, and I'm not 100% sure if that structure necessarily works as poignantly as it could in this genre. It's different if you're Within the Ruins or if you're Whitechapel and you're incorporating actually sung choruses, but it just kind of jumbles together and makes any feeling of a structure go out the window, and you're just repeating a part that was in a previous part of the song, but not really changing much up from an instrumental point of view or even a vocal point of view especially. But overall, these are all just little gripes. As a whole, I think Immortal is one of the more exciting and heavier deathcore releases that I've heard in a while, without just getting so brutal that it's just off the hinges. It is really heavy, but it's also surprisingly intelligible in its technicality, and I do like that a lot. I look forward to seeing who they get to fill CJ's shoes. Maybe Tom could return if he finds the time. But otherwise, my condolences to the band for having to go through this drama, and I hope it all pans out. I hope that this isn't a breaking point for the band where it goes downhill and maybe they just stop making music. Because certainly it's shitty if what is true about CJ is true, considering with him in the band, Immortal came out so good that it was putting Lorna Shore on a trajectory to be one of the most exciting deathcore bands on the scene right now. Not that they weren't already. But either way, I'm just excited to see what the future holds for the band. I'm going to be giving this album an 8 out of 10. And that is a wrap. Have you heard this new Lorna Shore record, Immortal? Let me know in the comment section below what you thought about it. What are your thoughts of the whole CJ situation? I would love to discuss this with you. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morse, the Review Guy, and I'm signing off saying fair.
Go ahead, live your best life.